Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beetle Dustino, coming at you again today with yet another video, and yet another, in a long time it's been, but another ranking video. A request from a viewer. Somebody commented on one of my videos recently asking for me to do this, basically. And funny, I had just seen a few months ago, Matthew Street had done one, and I commented to him, I've been planning to do this, and I rewatched his video, just kind of getting my head kind of, the format on it, I guess. There we go. And his video was due to a request from a fan, and I'm sitting there thinking, is it the same fan? No. So mine's Miss Condor Jr., though. Requested for me to do a Beatles album cover ranking video and said to include the solo stuff. So I'm going to break it down into a little bit of a thing here, but let's discuss more of that after the intro. Yes, in this video, I'm going to focus on the UK albums from the 60s. And I've decided I'm going to kind of break it down into a few categories. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the best from each category and I'm going to do a ranking of those then. So I will do the UK albums, the US albums, and I'm going to include in from the 60s. I should put it that way. 60s up until the breakup. Let's put it that way. So the 60s into the very early 70s on the US and the UK, starting with the UK. And then we'll do the compilations from the 70s into the early 80s, and then we'll do the compilations from, and live albums too in there, from the late 80s, so the CD era I call it, the late 80s till now, and then we'll do the solo stuff. And I don't know if I'm going to go as nuts with the solo stuff with the live albums, compilations, stuff like that. We'll see how it goes. I've not all of them have got a lot on that stuff, so it would be kind of hard. Maybe I could combine all four of them into one, on especially the compilations. I don't think, well, John's got so many though. So yeah, I don't know. Anyways, it's going to be quite a series here. I don't think it's going to be every week I'm going to have one of these, but every now and then we'll pop in a new album cover ranking. And in doing this, I'm going to do it a little different than some people do. I've seen a few of these type of videos, but they tend to just focus on the cover. And I'm going to look too if there's a gatefold, if there's, some good imagery on the back, stuff like that. That is going to kind of factor in, but not 100%. Like, I'm not doing like a true ranking on that. But some of these might just get a little smidge better than others just because of the fact, the package overall has got a little bit, and kind of giving a little fairness to albums like the White Album, which really isn't much, with the fact that on the inside, there's quite a bit of great stuff. So, and, kind of factor that into it too. It's not going to totally help it like get number one or anything like that, but just to move it up a bit. And speaking of that, this is kind of my rules, my thoughts. Everybody's going to have their own opinions on everything. I wouldn't expect any of us to be exactly the same. And that's why we do these ranking videos. So I just want to put a little disclaimer out here. Don't get angry at me if something isn't where you expect it to be. This is my ranking, not yours. If you want to tell me yours, please leave a comment on what yours is and be, nice about it and everything. I always got to put these disclaimers with this. I've never had that much trouble, but I've seen other people maybe. And I just always want to throw out this disclaimer. I'm not out here to anger anybody or anything like that. And honestly, looking at these, it was tough. It was tougher than even ranking the albums based on the music. The first few wasn't too hard to kind of, the lower ones. It wasn't too hard to kind of break down what, I kind of thought was kind of the bottom. But once I got into the meat of it there, the rest of those, 10 albums, I'm sitting there staring at them for a while going, do I really want to go this way or this way or this way or this? So really the top 10 could almost be number one in my opinion. And I'll kind of tell you where the break goes in there. And I'm going to use to hold up pretty much my in mono box. I think this was probably the best representation of the UK stuff. Unfortunately, there's a few albums that don't come in that. So I'll just use the US based jacket for that. So and just to make it easier to hold and everything on everything. But, so all the disclaimers, all the explanations, everything out of the way, let's get on with the list here. So we're going to do 13 albums. Yes, 13. And there might be one missing that everybody's kind of surprised about because they expect it to be in that 13. And you're going to be surprised what's included in the 13. Like I said, I want to do the UK-based albums from the 1960s. So number 13 is actually going to be probably that odd one that everybody's going, where did that come from? Well, it's a collection of oldies but goodies. This one will be my number 13, so the lowest ranked. It really is a compilation. It's an odd compilation. Yes, I'm holding up a bootleg CD version of it here, so you know, that's the best I've got for for showing here. This originally came out though on December 9th of 1966. Got my notes here where I got to get them where I can read them. So here, we'll do this. There we go. That way you don't got to look at me read. So it's David Christian was the artist that did the artwork here, and then Robert Whitaker did the rear photo here, and this was in the Tokyo Hilton when they were playing there and kind of stuck in their room there. So, but yeah, this is going to be my number 13. It's interesting, I guess is the best way to put it. It's definitely of that era, especially really getting into the psychedelic era in 66, 67. So it really fits with that, the swinging 60s in London. You know, the artwork fits with that, but is it truly a Beatles cover? This would have been a much better cover, if you ask me. So much better there. But yeah, that is where this is going to go. So let's move on to number 12. And from this point on, it's going to be pretty much your standard albums that everybody's used to. So number 12, this one, like I said, it's so hard. These are all so iconic and so, just great. Those images are just seared into your brain. Anytime you hear a song off of that album, you immediately picture that album cover. But I'm going Please Please Me, their first album, as the number 12. And this one, the album was originally released on March 22nd, 1963, and it's Angus McBean was the photographer on this. Pretty famous photo, but what I'm really kind of taken aback with on it, and I suppose if I had an LP version of it, it might be a little better, but they seem so lost in the image here, their faces and that. And then plus you got this big yellow The Beatles, which isn't even really their true font. I suppose they were still looking for that. And then all this down here too, kind of taken away from that. I know Matthew Street said in his video, when this came out 10 years later on Beatles 62 to 66, it was much better on the Red album there, how it was used. It was an alternate version of this photo though. But yeah, that's the front there, and the back really didn't help it out much there. And no like really fun inner sleeves or anything. Just pretty basic Parlophone EMI sleeve at the time. So nothing really to get kind of bonus points on that. Nice little write-up on the back there and everything, but no images or anything like that. So yeah, unfortunately, Please Please Me is going to be number 12. And number 11 is going to be Help. And this one, I'm really kind of surprised I put it this low, but this was one of the ones that really easily came to me. Help, of course, originally came out August 6, 1965, and of course this is a Robert Freeman one. Several of these are going to be Robert Freeman on the photography there. It's just so kind of plain. And one thing I think that kind of distracts me on it is they're supposed to be spelling out help here with this, symbol thing that they would do. I wish that they actually spelled out HELP with it, which I get that, it maybe wasn't quite as aesthetically pleasing the real way, and this maybe looked a little better, but the fact that it doesn't really spell out what they're trying to do, I think that kind of takes away from it. I suppose when this originally came out in 65, whatever, people didn't realize what it was, so cool, it looks great, but the fact that it's just a plain white background, so forth and so on, it's just very plain and kind of zoomed out on their faces. I like when you get their faces and they're a little better, as you're going to see here. But the back, we do got some imagery, which is nice, a little bit more than just a little write-up, so you do get a few more photos of the guys there. Maybe that'll help it out a little, not being the complete bottom there, but that's where Help is going to lay. So number 10 And this one was the one that was really kind of tricky on it, because I get where the artwork is coming from here, but we'll hold it up there. It's the Beatles, aka the White Album, originally released on November 22nd, 1968. The sleeve and poster were kind of designed and done by Richard Hamilton, and John Kelly did the portraits, of course, the famous portraits on the inside. I couldn't put it any higher than 10, even though I totally get. And see, this is part of what's helping it out, is you do got, the images on the inside. We got, of course, the poster, the picture cards and everything. Even going as far as the top loader design on the package and the black inner sleeves. So that's kind of a great contrast, with the artwork here. You've got, just this plain white image with the embossed Beatles there. And then, of course, the numbering. This version doesn't have the numbering, but you'd have your number down there if it was a original LP there. But yeah, I get it too, coming off Sgt Peppers. Even if you want to include Magical Mystery Tour in there, all the color and pop that you got out of that, and just to go to this. So I respect that. But yeah, there's just not a lot going on. Even the back is just plain white. So yeah, unfortunately, White Album is going to be at number 10. So where are we at to? We're at number 9. Number 9. I had to do it. We're going to just cut it there. But this will be number 9. And it's Yellow Submarine, originally released on January 17th, 1969. The artwork is, of course, by Heinz Edelman. Yeah, I had to kind of put it here because it's great. It's iconic and everything. But, I wish that maybe it was maybe a little bit closer on this and a little less on this stuff. And you got this big sea of gray there, basically. And that kind of takes away. I love all the little, your characters from the film and that. But I wish that it focused a little more on the Beatles, on the guys. Like maybe like that. Hopefully I'm getting that held just right up into the camera there. That would have been a better imagery on it. And this is a U.S. back. I know there's a little difference on the U.K. versus the U.S. Back on this, I believe. I'm not sure 100% the sleeve on it, but I think there is a little bit of a difference. I really wish I had a mini LP version of this to match with my in mono stuff here. It's one thing that in mono box really kind of messed us up on. There were these 3 albums that just didn't get included. But yeah, I don't know. And the fact that it is just, animated artwork of them and not, actual pictures of them and that, but it is supposed to represent the film and the animated film. So there we go. It is great for, representing that soundtrack for the film. And this is a true soundtrack, which was unusual for the UK releases for the soundtrack films. Where in the US you did get true soundtracks with the, the score from the film there and everything. Yeah, it really represents that well, but I can't put it any higher than that. And speaking of films, we actually got a row of them here. I think when I did the album ranking too, it kind of went, a bunch of the films were all kind of right in a row. But anyways, we got Let It Be will be up next. And this one, I don't know. This one I was kind of torn on how to rank this, especially considering the back gatefold, stuff like that, because there was quite a significant difference between the US and the UK again. Of course, in the UK, you did get the box set, which had the, the big book with it and everything. Is that really going to affect it that much? And even in the US, of course, you got the gatefold, as this version is, and then the back. So basically, though, if you didn't get the box set in the UK, because there was that version too, it would have been just this and this. I think the apple might be green on some of them. It might be red in the box set or something I thought I saw, but green elsewise. Let me know in the comments if I got that correct. Where on the US one, it's just the red. And of course, we got the red labels on the vinyl and everything. But then we get the gatefold here, which is a lot of the images out of the book. So it's kind of like, yeah, we did get a gatefold in the US, but it's stuff that if you got the box set version, you got all that anyway, plus more. Pretty great image, though. It still is great. And this is where we're going to start getting into any one of these could be a number 1. This maybe not quite a number 1, but, at least a top 5. So it being at 8, it's about right there. And this, of course, the album originally came out May 8th of 1970. John Koch was the designer, and Ethan Russell was the photographer on this. Now number 7, we're back to the in mono box here for me to show you here. And we're going to go, like I said, keeping with the films here. We got A Hard Day's Night. And again, like I said, any one of these could have been a top one. However, this is a little too busy for me. I love the fact that it's busy. I love the fact you got all these photos and representing kind of the film going down. I absolutely love George's back of his head there. Almost centered in there too. That it's right there, just all of a sudden the back of his head. So, I mean, there's a lot of fun, a lot of play on this, but it's just a little too busy. As you're going to see, my favorites are a little more simplified. And I love that. And just showing the guys there, of course. And then the back, we do got some images there on the back, but not quite as much. And again, the inside, and I really didn't talk about the inside on those, but none of them really got anything too crazy, aside from like Sgt Peppers, as we'll get to that. So this one will be there. This, of course, originally released on July 10th, 1964, and Robert Freeman, again, was the photographer on this one. Okay, and we're at number 6 here, and we're going to go with the Beatles. So originally came out on November 22nd, 1963. Robert Freeman, of course. This, I think, would have been his first one, actually, and kind of inspired by Astrid Kirchher's, I think I said her name, Kirchher's. There we go, Kirchher's. Some photographs that she did of them while they were in Hamburg there. They kind of did a inspired kind of version with Robert Freeman there on this. So I really think this one, I'm shocked that it didn't go quite as high, but it's right in the middle. And this is kind of what I'm more liking. But again, we're only seeing half of their faces really. And, the top two, it would have been cool maybe if they could have made it the whole thing here with all this white up at the top and then the lettering. Maybe something with that maybe could have helped it out a little more. And then there's really nothing on the back either. So, and again, nothing really much on the inner sleeve, just your pretty standard inner sleeve, stuff like that. So that's why this is going to sit at number 6. But the image itself, just bringing it down to right there, is so iconic. I think that is what pushed it up to that number 6 with all these great album covers that we got here. And that's why, that the viewer kind of suggested to do this, because there is such great imagery, and kind of trying to rank it and everything is tough. And this one, I think, is going to anger some people, but as I've been describing, I like it a little more simplified. I like it a little more focused on the guys. So Sgt Peppers is going to get the number 5 spot, believe it or not. I was shocked when this came down to, I was really kind of like, where is this going to go? I knew pretty strong what imagery I've absolutely loved, and I do absolutely love this. So like I said, any given moment, this could be the number 1. And this one really does have a lot going on overall in the package, because like I said, a lot of the inner sleeves on those other ones are just pretty standard. The back, of course, we got the lyrics for the first time all over the back, plus we got another image of the guys down there. And then this should really help it out. I'm surprised that this didn't push it forward any further, but that's kind of where it's at. And of course you get, your mustache and everything you can cut out, and the inner sleeve here. So speaking of the inner sleeve and the artwork here, we'll put this back up here for you to kind of look at instead of watching me read. But yeah, this originally came out on May 26, 1967. Peter Blake and Jan Haworth were the designers on it. And then Robert Fraser was the art director. Michael Cooper was the photographer. We got so many to credit here. And then The Fool did that inner sleeve, that psychedelic inner sleeve there, which is part, what kind of is helping it go where it's at. But like I said, it's just a little busy here. And that is part of what makes it so iconic is, all these faces and everything. And, doing that. But I just think these next ones are just a little better because we're focused on the guys. So let's get on to that. And this one, we're kind of still in that, if this was a gatefold or something, I think this would have done a little better. But Abbey Road is going to be my number 4, I'm sorry. Number 4, wow. So originally released September 26, 1969. Koch, I think he was just going by at the time, John Koch, who also did the Let It Be, the kind of the creative director on that also. And then Ian McMillan is the photographer on this, of course. And I mean, how perfect it was to get that. But again, we got all this up here and just, you know, them down there. You know, if it was a little more cropped in on them, I think I might put it a little higher. Like I said, it is my my ranking on this, so that's why we're going with this. Even though I absolutely love this cover, this could easily be number one. But just looking at the next three, I respect it a little more with that, even though I think this is so just iconic and just absolutely amazing. But there's no gatefold, there's no anything fun with an inner sleeve, anything like that. I'm actually kind of surprised this Sgt. Peppers didn't beat this out, you know, speaking of that. But, you know, kind of factoring in that, like I said, they were going to factor in, but not a huge amount. But I would prefer looking at Abbey Road than Sgt. Peppers. So I guess that's why that is going where it's going to go. Number three, this one I think is the best one in terms of like the artistic form of it and everything. And it's so iconic and so great. And it kind of blends in with the photography of Robert Freeman, because he's got some stuff in here. But Klaus Vorman, of course, is the kind of the creative director on this. But, you know, a lot of the photos in the collage here are Robert Freeman. I think the back is Robert Freeman, too. I'm looking at the back here. But we got Revolver, originally released August 5th, 1966. And I just told you all the art people with it. And, of course, there is the back. So we do got a nice photo of them on the back there. And really kind of cool. Nothing really crazy on the inside. Still just pretty much that standard EMI Parlophone sleeve. So not much there. But I absolutely love this because we do got a nice close-up of them in the art-wise version here. So we got Paul there, Ringo, George, John there. And then, you know, all the collage of... So it's kind of a precursor to Sgt. Pepper's in a way, except with this, it was them. All the faces. It was, you know, the Beatles. And then, of course, we got everybody else, you know, watching Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And then we go to the White Album. So, I mean, what a progression there that was. To go from this crazy, you know, kind of pop art at the time, psychedelic art, to the colorful version of Sgt. Pepper's to just the plain white image on the White Album. So, very cool, great, you know, kind of progression of albums there. And I think you would have had that collection of Beatles oldies, though, in between this, wouldn't you? Yeah, that would have came out in between Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's. Ooh, that would have really thrown it off. So we're to the top two. So how am I going to go on this? And people are probably, like, shocked, you know, kind of factoring in, well, what albums are left here? And there's one that you might think should be in this that is missing. And I'll explain a little more at the end here. I think you're probably figuring out why when I said I'm going to do the U.S. ones, though, next. So we got number two will be Beatles For Sale. And I just love this image. Yes, they're tired, they're worn out and everything, but they should have been at this point in their career. But it's just such a great image. Robert Freeman again on this. The album originally came out December 4th, 1964, so right at the end of that crazy, crazy year for them. So yes, like I said, they should be looking like this. I absolutely love George's hair, kind of a little cowlick or whatever you want to say, you know, puffing up there. The focused in, you know, of the foliage there, kind of blurred out, but they got this, you know, immaculate image of them, you know, focused on there. And then the back, we get this great photo too. So you're getting a great photo front and back, and then your first gatefold ever. I think this is, well, why I'm making it so like whatever, but there weren't that many gatefolds actually in the Beatles original catalog here. So it was just Sgt. Pepper's and this, wasn't it? Well, no, and White Album, and then Let It Be in the States. But anyways, so we get a lot of nice imagery here. So all that factor, just such a great photo here. Again, the back, you got just an amazing photo of the guys there. And then you got even more here with this. And your sleeve is nothing fancy. It's, once again, just that standard EMI sleeve. But then the design of this, too, that you're coming out the middle here of the gatefold, not out the side or anything like that. So there's a lot of, you know, just crazy stuff going on here. You know, factoring in more than just the photograph, you know, factoring in the artwork of the sleeve and everything there. So, yeah, that is why Beatles For Sale ends up at number 2. So I think everybody's figuring out what number 1 is. It's also my #1 album right now. Last time I did a ranking, but that will be Rubber Soul. Originally released on December 3rd, 1965. And again, Robert Freeman is the photographer here. So, and I love the story on this one, and just the way the image is, kind of that elongated image with the slide falling over. And then the Rubber Soul font there is just so cool. And the fact, yes, we do got some lettering on it, and that we really didn't have a ton on this, which is kind of surprising, you know, a year earlier, where we did go to a little bigger letters, a little bigger font on that. But the fact that all it says is Rubber Soul, you know, it's just so cool. And then you flip it to the back and you get all these photos of them there too, which is just really cool. The inside though, you know, no gatefold, no nothing like that. And again, just that standard EMI Parlophone sleeve. So nothing like crazy with that. But just the way this image is, and you know, they kind of got the green tint in there and everything, and it's so cool. I mean, to me, this is the Beatles. I think of the Beatles, if I just immediately think of the Beatles, this is what I think about. And, you know, not Abbey Road, not Sgt Peppers, it's that. So, you know, for that just to be seared into my brain like that, I think they did a really good job on Rubber Soul. And that album has always just been tops, not only for its content, but for its artwork and design. So that's just, I absolutely love it. So... But anyways, that is my ranking of the Beatles album covers, the artwork on the album covers for the UK. So stay tuned. I don't know when it's going to be. I'm hoping to be fairly soon with it. I'm going to do the US album covers too. So that's where you're going to get Magical Mystery Tour. If you were paying attention, I said there's one that I think a lot of people expect would be in here that isn't going to be. That would be where you're going to see it as in my US one, because that is truly, technically, a US album. So we're going to include that with the US albums. So just a heads up already, I'm just going to say I'm not going to include Revolver and Rubber Soul in that, even though there is a bit of a difference with Rubber Soul with just the color, and that's the reason why I'm not going to include it, because it's so similar, and I don't want that ended up being #1 with the US ones too, because it more than likely would, and Revolver would probably end up pretty high too, because yeah. However, I think there is one in the US albums, now that I'm thinking about it, that is might even top them, because I absolutely love that album cover. I think it is one that they just knocked out of the park with the Capitol albums. But you're going to have to stay tuned for that when I got my next video. I'm going to get wrapping up, though, before I get rambling too much here. And before I do that, I want to once again thank all my subscribers, and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos, like that US albums cover ranking. And then also, please give the video a like. If you have stuck around to this point, like I always say, you must like it, so please give it a like, and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. I do want to know your ranking on it. Like I said, be kind about it. If you don't think that this is how your ranking should go, don't, you know, be like, oh, that's a terrible choice. Don't be like that. Tell me what you think, because none of us got this wrong. Like I said, that top 9, basically, was just tough. I remember I laid all these out on my little ottoman. I'm sitting there staring at them, you know, sitting in my chair staring at them, and like, how do I go with this? It's just, you know, it was tough. It wasn't tough to put that bottom 3, you know, the lower 4, I guess we'll say. That wasn't too tough. But to put the rest of it into an order was tough. Tougher than I thought. So, yeah. Let me know your thoughts, because like I said, it's tougher than you think. So if you got a different way, I want to know. Let me know how you would put it. None of us are going to go wrong. We aren't. It's the Beatles. It's great artwork. It's great music. It's great everything. So just let me know your thoughts on it. And I'm going to get fully signing out. I am Beatle Dustino, signing out.